The man's fingers released the railing. Went for a heartbeat. He hung in the air, gravity beginning its pull. Then a hand grabbed his wrist, a hand reaching from a wheelchair positioned at the bridge's edge. "Not today," the woman said quietly, her grip stronger than he expected. "I've been where you are, and I'm not letting you make the mistake I almost made." The veteran who came to the bridge to die found himself pulled back by someone who had once stood on this same ledge 7 years ago to the day. Before we begin, I want to say something important. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please reach out for help. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24/7 at 988. You are not alone, and your life has value. This story is about hope, survival, and the connections that save us. Please stay with us. March 15th had become Rachel Hayes' most important day of the year. Not her birthday, not the anniversary of her discharge from the Army, but the day she chose to live instead of die. 7 years ago, on a cold spring night, Lieutenant Rachel Hayes had stood on the Henderson Bridge with every intention of jumping. Her legs had worked then. She could have walked away, driven home, called someone for help. Instead, she had climbed over the railing and stood on the narrow ledge looking down at the black water 200 feet below. The war had taken so much from her. Her team, her sense of purpose, her ability to sleep without seeing the faces of the men she'd failed to save. The IED that eventually took her legs had, in a terrible way, been a relief. Physical pain she could understand, physical wounds she could name. But that night on the bridge, before the injury, she had been whole in body and shattered in spirit. She had been 30 seconds from letting go when a voice behind her said, "I know what you're thinking, and I'm here to tell you it gets better." Rachel had turned to see an older veteran in a wheelchair, his eyes carrying the same exhaustion she felt. They had talked for 3 hours on that bridge. He never told her his name, never asked for hers. He just told her his story about his own suicide attempt, about choosing to live, about the hard years that followed and the good ones that eventually came. "I come back here every year," he had said, "on the anniversary of the day I didn't jump. Sometimes I just sit and remember. Sometimes I find someone who needs to hear that they're not alone." Rachel had climbed back over the railing that night. 3 months later, the IED took her legs, and in the pain and rehabilitation that followed, she often thought about that stranger in the wheelchair who had saved her life by sharing his story. Now, 7 years later, Rachel did the same thing. Every March 15th, she returned to the Henderson Bridge. She would arrive at sunset and stay until midnight, watching for the signs: someone standing too long at the railing, someone whose body language spoke of finality, someone saying goodbye to a world they thought no longer wanted them. Most years, she sat alone, remembering her own darkness and celebrating the light she had found. Some years, she talked to joggers or photographers or couples enjoying the view, never knowing if they needed the conversation or were simply being polite. But tonight, at 11:43 p.m., she saw him. He was tall, probably early 30s, wearing an army field jacket that had seen better days. He stood at the railing in the pedestrian section, his hands gripping the metal so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Rachel had been watching him for 10 minutes, and everything about his posture said he wasn't admiring the view. She wheeled herself closer, moving slowly so as not to startle him. The bridge was empty, this late on a Tuesday night, just the two of them, and the sound of water rushing far below. "Beautiful night," Rachel said softly when she was about 15 feet away. The man didn't turn. "Go away. I will if you want me to. But I've been where you are and I know how alone it feels. Thought you might like some company." "I don't need company. I need," his voice broke. "I need this to stop." Rachel moved closer, positioning her wheelchair where she could reach the railing if needed. "What needs to stop?" "Everything. The memories, the guilt, the feeling that I'm already dead and my body just hasn't figured it out yet." "Afghanistan or Iraq?" Rachel asked. The man turned then, looking at her for the first time. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard. "How did you—" "The jacket, the look in your eyes, the fact that you're on this bridge at midnight. I recognize a fellow soldier when I see one." "I'm not a soldier anymore," he said bitterly. I'm nothing. What's your name?" He hesitated. "David, Staff Sergeant David Chen, former." "Rachel Hayes, Lieutenant, also former." She gestured to her wheelchair. "Army Rangers." 2 tours Afghanistan. David's eyes flicked to the wheelchair, then back to her face. Something shifted in his expression, recognition, maybe, or kinship. I lost my team, he said suddenly, the words bursting out like he'd been holding them in too long. All of them. We were on patrol in Kandahar, and I made the call. I said we should take the shorter route. Faster, I thought. Easier. His hands were shaking on the railing now. There was an IED. I was point, so I should have died first. But it wasn't positioned for point. It was positioned for the middle of the formation, where Martinez walked, where Johnson and Park and Williams walked. Tears were streaming down his face now. They died instantly, all 4 of them, and I didn't have a scratch. Not one. I walked away from that explosion like I was taking a fucking stroll. While my men, my responsibility, they were gone. Rachel listened without interrupting, letting him pour out the poison he'd been carrying. That was 3 years ago, David continued. 3 years of therapy and medication and people telling me it wasn't my fault. But it was. I made the call. I chose that route. They died because of me. And you think jumping off this bridge will fix that? Rachel asked gently. I think it'll stop the dreams. Stop waking up every night, hearing Martinez screaming for his wife. Stop seeing Johnson's. His voice broke completely. I can't do this anymore. I've tried. God, I've tried so hard. But I'm so tired, and they're dead, and I don't deserve to keep living when they didn't get to. Rachel was quiet for a moment, watching the water below. Then she spoke. May 12, 2018, Helmand Province. My Rangers unit was providing security for a village meeting. We'd been there for 3 days, getting to know the locals, building trust. The village elder's daughter brought us tea. David turned to look at her, drawn by the specific details. The tea was poisoned, Rachel said, her voice steady but distant. Mild enough that it just made us sick.
Yeah.
Sick enough that we were distracted when the real attack came. RPGs from the North Ridge, small arms fire from the buildings. We were surrounded, compromised, and I was the ranking officer. She gripped her wheelchair's armrests. I called for extraction, but the LZ was hot, so I made a call. I told my team to hold position in the village center while I drew fire from the North Ridge, suppression run, by myself, to give the helicopters a chance to land. Rachel's jaw tightened. I drew the fire, all right, and while I was engaging targets on the ridge, a second IED went off in the village center, right where my team was holding position. The position I had ordered them to maintain. David's eyes widened. 8 Rangers, Rachel said. 8 men under my command. Oh! The blast killed 6 of them instantly. 2 survived long enough for me to reach them. Long enough for me to hold their hands while they died. Long enough to tell them I was sorry, so fucking sorry. Jesus, David whispered. I lost my legs 3 months later. Rachel continued. Different mission, different IED. And you want to know the worst part? I was relieved. Finally, I had a wound.
People could see.
Finally, I had a reason for the pain that everyone could understand. She looked directly at David. 7 years ago tonight, I stood where you're standing. I was whole, physically. I could walk, run, fight, but inside I was destroyed. I had killed my team through my own orders and I couldn't live with it. What stopped you? David asked hoarsely. An old veteran in a wheelchair. He pulled up next to me, just like I'm doing with you now, and he told me his story about his own team, his own losses, his own suicide attempt. He told me that survivor's guilt is the price we pay for caring about our people, that it never goes away, but it can coexist with meaning and purpose and even joy. Rachel moved her wheelchair closer. He told me that my team wouldn't want me to die because they did, that the best way to honor them was to live, really live, for all of us, to carry their memory forward, not into the grave. I don't know how to do that, David said, and for the first time there was something other than despair in his voice, a question.
A plea for help.
Neither did I, Rachel admitted. For years I didn't. I went through the motions, therapy, medication, physical rehab after I lost my legs. But I wasn't really living. I was just existing. What changed? I came back here on the anniversary of the night I almost jumped, and I saw someone else standing at this railing looking down at the water, and I realized that if I let myself die, whether by jumping or by just giving up on life, then that person would have no one to pull them back. She reached out slowly, carefully, and placed her hand on the railing near his. I can't bring back Martinez, Johnson, Park, and Williams. You can't bring them back. We have to carry that. But David, we can honor them. We can live the lives they didn't get to live. We can help other veterans who are drowning in the same guilt we feel. We can be the voice that says you're not alone to someone who desperately needs to hear it. David was crying openly now, his shoulders shaking. It hurts so much. Every single day, it hurts. I know, Rachel said softly. I know it does. But pain means you're still here, still feeling, still human, and humans were built to survive, even when we don't think we can. I don't want to die, David whispered. I just want it to stop hurting. Then let's work on that, together. Not by ending your life, but by finding ways to live with the pain, to honor your team by being the man they believed in. David looked at her, really looked at her. How? How do you do it? Therapy, real therapy, with someone who specializes in combat trauma. Support groups with other vets who understand. Finding purpose. For me, it's coming here every year. For you, it might be something else. Volunteer work, helping other vets, coaching kids' sports, something that reminds you that your life still has meaning. Rachel paused, then added, and medication when you need it. There's no shame in that. Our brains are injured just like bodies can be injured. Sometimes we need help to heal. What if it's not enough? David asked. What if I still can't? Then you reach out. To me, to a crisis line. To anyone. You don't face those moments alone. Here, Rachel pulled out her phone awkwardly with one hand while keeping the other near the railing. Give me your number, right now, so that when you're standing at the edge again, because you might be, and that's okay, you can call me instead of climbing over. David stared at her. You'd do that? For a stranger? You're not a stranger. You're a fellow soldier. You're someone who carried a burden that no one should have to carry. And you're someone who deserves to live, even if you don't believe it right now. Slowly, David pulled out his own phone. His hands were shaking as he recited his number, and Rachel programmed it into her contacts. There, she said. Now you have a lifeline. Use it. What if I call you at 3 a.m. having a nightmare? Then I'll answer. I'm usually awake at 3 a.m. anyway. David let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You really almost jumped from here. Right where you're standing. 7 years ago tonight. And now you're still struggling sometimes, still missing my team, still dealing with PTSD and chronic pain and the challenges of life in a wheelchair, but also living, really living. I've made friends, found purpose, had moments of genuine happiness. It's not the life I planned, but it's a life worth living. David was quiet for a long moment, looking down at the water. Rachel waited, her hand still resting on the railing near his, ready to grab him if he moved toward the edge. Finally, David spoke. Martinez used to joke that if I ever did anything stupid, he'd come back and haunt me. Said he'd make my life a living hell if I wasted the life he died protecting. Sounds like he was a good friend. The best, David's voice cracked. They all were. Then honor them, live for them, let their memory be a source of strength, not just pain. David turned away from the railing, facing Rachel fully. I don't know if I can do this. You don't have to know. You just have to try. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time, if you need to. And when you can't do it alone, you reach out. To you, to me, to a therapist, to other vets, to the crisis line, to anyone. Promise me, David, promise me you won't face the darkness alone. David nodded slowly, tears still streaming down his face. I promise, I'll try. That's all any of us can do. Try. Fail sometimes. Try again. Rachel reached out her hand, and after a moment, David took it. His grip was strong, desperate, the grip of someone clinging to a lifeline. Come on, Rachel said. Let's get off this bridge. I know a 24-hour diner about 3 blocks from here. Terrible coffee, but it's open. We can sit and talk, or just sit in silence. Whatever you need, you don't have to. I know, but I'm going to. Because 7 years ago, someone did the same for me. And that's how this works. We save each other. David helped push Rachel's wheelchair toward the bridge exit. As they moved away from the railing, Rachel pulled out her phone and texted a number she'd saved for emergencies, a crisis counselor who specialized in veteran suicide prevention. Have potential client, male veteran, early 30s, survivor's guilt, high risk, needs immediate appointment. Can you fit him in tomorrow? The response came back within minutes. Yes, send his contact info. I'll call him first thing. Rachel showed the text to David. This is Dr. Sarah Kim.
She's a veteran herself, Marines. She specializes in combat trauma and PTSD.
I'm sending her your number. She'll call you tomorrow to set up an appointment. Will you answer? David hesitated, then nodded. I'll answer. They reached the diner at 12:17 a.m. The fluorescent lights were harsh after the darkness of the bridge, and the place was nearly empty except for a tired waitress and a truck driver at the counter. Rachel ordered coffee. David ordered the same, though his hands shook as he lifted the cup. Tell me about them, Rachel said after a few minutes. Martinez, Johnson, Park, Williams, not how they died, who they were. David looked up, surprised. What? Your team, tell me about them, the good memories, the stupid jokes, the moments that made you brothers. People don't usually want to hear. I do, because they deserve to be remembered for how they lived, not just how they died. So David talked, haltingly at first, then with more confidence, he told her about Martinez's terrible singing and his devotion to his wife and baby daughter, about Johnson's ability to make anyone laugh, even in the worst situations, about Park's quiet competence and the way he could fix anything with duct tape and determination, about Williams, the youngest of the group, who wrote poetry in his downtime and dreamed of becoming a teacher. Rachel listened, really listened, seeing these men through David's eyes, seeing them as people, not just casualties, seeing why their loss had nearly destroyed the man sitting across from her. They sound like they were incredible, Rachel said when David finished. They were, and they deserved better than. They deserved to live, Rachel interrupted gently, but they didn't, and that's a tragedy. But David, you surviving isn't a betrayal of them, it's a gift, a chance to carry their stories forward, to make sure they're not forgotten. David was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee. Then he said, I haven't said their names out loud in over a year. I thought it would hurt too much. Did it? Yes. But also, he paused, searching for words. It felt good to remember them as people, to say their names and know that they mattered. They did matter. They do matter. And so do you. They sat in that diner until 3 a.m., talking about war and loss and survival. All Rachel shared more of her own story, the nightmares, the guilt, the slow process of learning to live with pain rather than be consumed by it. David listened and occasionally shared his own struggles. When they finally left, David helped Rachel into her adaptive van. Before closing the door, he said, Thank you for being on that bridge tonight, for stopping me. Thank you for letting me, Rachel replied, for choosing to live. I'm still not sure about tomorrow or the day after, but tonight I'm choosing to see what happens next. That's enough. That's more than enough. Rachel drove home as dawn was breaking over the city. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also filled with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. She had saved a life tonight, just like someone had once saved hers. The next evening, David texted her, met with Dr. Kim today. She's tough but good. Scheduling regular appointments. Martinez's widow called me yesterday. First time we've talked since the funeral. She said he wouldn't want me to give up. I think she's right. Rachel texted back, one day at a time, you've got this. And when you don't, you've got people who care. 3 months later, Rachel received another text from David, starting a support group for combat vets dealing with survivor's guilt. Dr. Kim is helping me organize it. Would you be willing to speak at our first meeting? Share your story. Rachel smiled as she typed her response. I'd be honored. A year after that night on the bridge, Rachel was sitting in the same spot, marking the anniversary of the night she chose to live. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Year ago tonight, you saved my life. Just wanted you to know I'm glad you did. Martinez's daughter is starting kindergarten next week. I'm going to be there for her first day. All living for all of us, just like you said. Rachel looked out at the bridge, at the water below, at the railing where 2 veterans had once stood at the edge of darkness. She thought about the old veteran in the wheelchair who had saved her, and about David, and about all the veterans still struggling in silence. She couldn't save everyone. Some battles were lost, despite the best efforts. But tonight, looking at David's text, she was reminded that sometimes the right words at the right moment could pull someone back from the edge. And that was worth living for. Before you go, I want to repeat this important message. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please reach out for help. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 988. The Veterans Crisis Line is also 988. Then press 1. You are not alone. Your life has value. There are people who want to help. If this story touched you, share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Hit that subscribe button for more stories from Veterans Past Stories, and remember, choosing to live, even when it's hard, is the bravest thing any of us can do.